Hello all, I hope you are well in these extraordinary times. I would like to welcome you all to the Fintech Finance Virtual Arena where we're hosting you all today. In this special arena we're going to be discussing the SME market, how to scale and the cloud. All this against a very worrying backdrop that we find ourselves in, once again highlighting some of the ways that SMEs tend to be underserved. I was very fortunate last year to speak with the CTO, Monica, from Recognize, who surprised me by having such a focus not just on the, got to do a pun, not just on recognizing the unsung users of financial services, but also on the customer experience to a way that I think a lot of banks tend to miss. Even in looking at things like how to service cash for restaurants and elements like that were a little bit surprising. So I'm very pleased to say that joining me today, I now actually have the CEO of Recognize Financial Services, Jason Oakley. How are you doing today, Jason?
I'm very well, Ali. Very well. Delighted to be with you.
Excellent. And you're in London or just outside?
No, I'm actually in a wonderful place of the world called the West Midlands. I'm in Wolverhampton, which is my family.
Oh, very nice.
The accent gives it away, Ali.
I think our friend Kevin's a very big Wolverhampton football fan, so...
Well, I'm a West Bromwich Albion fan, but I'm not going to go there.
Excellent. And joining us from Amsterdam, from cloud-based platform Mambu, we have their Chief Customer Officer, Elliot Limb. How's Amsterdam, Elliot?
Very good, thank you, Ali. It's actually sunny for a change, but you've actually got an East Midlander on the phone as well, as opposed to a West Midlander, and a Derby County fan. So we played each other in the playoffs, but let's not go there.
We all have our crosses to bear, Elliot. You know.
Exactly.
Well, what seems like, let's be very blunt, what seems like forever, the SMEs or mom and pops in the US have been quite underserved by the banking space. I'm an SME myself, and I still rely heavily on a very customized Google spreadsheet. What this obviously entails is things from the basics of account opening, access to finance, to simple access to cash. What's really been the root cause of SMEs being arguably underserved by financial services? What's the absolute baseline why they haven't had the attention that they deserve?
Well, shall I start? So I actually think, it's nothing short of a scandal, the way that SMEs have been taken for granted in the banking context. So I worked for the Royal Bank Group in the early 2000s, and we had something like about a 35% market share. And there were relationship managers, there was intimacy, there was community-based banking, there was accessibility. And of course, the financial crisis, 2007 onwards, caused a real problem for the big banks, and we understand that. But the SME segment is being orphaned, frankly. It's been left without community-based relationships. They've been forced into call centres. There isn't the real understanding, the bespoking, the connectivity or the accessibility for solutions. And the big banks, because it's an oligopoly, they've had about a 90% share of current accounts and over 75% share of senior debt. And there hasn't been the innovation. Yes, they've got hugely complex IT architectures. There are legacy platforms. There's all sorts of issues. But we've seen some of the innovation in retail, but we've seen virtually none in SME. And, Recognize, my applicant bank, is passionate about bringing basics back to SME clients. And basics are knowing your client, knowing about their business, being accessible directly on the telephone or over Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts, or whatever the technology, but being accessible, being responsive, and being creative. And for that to happen at a scale, with intimacy, but using the best of technology, we needed to find a banking platform that was composable, was flexible, was future-proof, that allowed us to meet the needs of our clients And frankly, we did a big search, and by far and away the outstanding platform was Mambu. So it became a very easy choice for us to put Mambu at the very heart of our architecture and our APIs around that. So, I think SMEs, you've only got to look, Ali. Why do I say it's a scandal? Because it's very emotive. The Corona virus business interruption loan scheme is a great example of the government being proactive, an unprecedented level of support. Look at the usage pattern. Look at people's stories about trying to speak to their bank, speak to a relationship manager that knows anything about them. And frankly, they're forced into call centres. And those call centres typically are telling you what your balance is or transferring money. How can you have a sensible conversation as an SME owner about understanding the cash flow, the business, the need to furlough staff, the need to continue to meet your VAT bills, your payroll bills, and all the other complexities associated with running a business?
Absolutely. Obviously, I know obviously you guys work with Mambu. What's Mambu's take on obviously the root cause for SMEs?
Well, I can give you Mambu's take and my own take, I think, in sort of two segments. So Mambu's take is, absolutely agree. We certainly see in the market there is a gap, and the way that it's driven from a technology point of view and allowing it to move, as Jason said, the relationship banking return, and seeing people actually drive that SME market. I mean, my history, I've been on pretty much all sides of this. I started off as a banker. I've worked in the corporate banking, SME banking, business banking sector. I was there in 2008 as well, and I saw everybody move to a white glove treatment, segmentation, and the SMEs got pushed down. And I agree with Jason, it's a travesty. They were not profitable, therefore they didn't really sit in retail banking, didn't really sit in corporate banking, and fell through a bit of a gap in the middle. I've also ran several businesses. I've been an SME in, I think, 3 different industries, and it's hell. Honestly, trying to get banking that understands you, trying to get that relationship, not be pushed to the call center, trying to get working capital, trying to understand how my business pains and everything are going to get driven and understood by my bank, didn't really exist. Very long time, it's just been a big black hole. So from my own personal experience and from Mambu in general, we see that what these guys are doing is exceptionally important in the market, and the more people that can cover the SME market and can drive it, very important, because it drives growth in the country and it drives growth internationally. More and more people are being driven towards building their own businesses, driving SME markets. If the banking isn't there to support it, how are they supposed to grow?
Can I just pick up one issue, Elliot? Because I absolutely agree with everything you said, bar for one issue, which is that what happens with big banks is they're managed by portfolio. So they look, so if I'm a big bank, I've got hundreds of thousands of SMEs, and I look at it as a portfolio. I might have some SIC code, some kind of sector specialisation, but generally speaking, it's this humongous blob. And we make judgments about whether it's profitable or not. This segment's profitable, that segment's profitable, regions, geographically, however it's cut. And without the intimacy and the knowledge, so I could well be banking at one of the big banks, Royal Bank Group, whoever it is, or Santander, whoever it is, but I may have a myriad of different businesses. And I may have something, let's say I've got a mail order business that turns over £50,000 a year. It's pretty small scale, but I've got lots of other businesses. But if I don't get to understand the client and their story and their business and their background and their aspirations and where they're looking to take the business and how it's part of a bigger group, and I look at it on a standalone basis, and I think, well, this makes me no money, so I'll force it into a call centre. But that business may be part of a much bigger business, and the downsides with segmentation and portfolio management is it's like sheep dipping. Everybody gets the same treatment, no matter whether you're good, bad or indifferent. And recognise fundamentally starts with every relationship's important. SMEs, let's not forget, SMEs make up over 50% of GDP. They represent 99% of all employers and over 60% of all employment. When we talk about travesty, if we do not support these businesses over the next few weeks and months, the knock-on impact on employment and the economy is going to be really quite severe. So, technology, the beauty with Mambu and some of the apps that are integrated into Mambu, and the beauty of the Mambu process orchestrator, that tech allows you to create bespoke solutions. It allows you to get to one-to-one. It allows you, with people, to really connect with the client and understand them. And that changes the game, because they're not unprofitable. Just the bank isn't particularly good at building a relationship with them.
Yeah, and I think that does. Sorry, Jason. I think that does knock on to exactly your point around vendor selection and the way technology is going at the moment. Putting the whole composable infrastructure, composable banking in place means that we can accept that not all banks are the same, in the same way that you accept not all customers are the same, and allow us to build that ecosystem and that bond across. It's gone are the days where a collaboration is just a bank demands their customers pay them and the technology vendor sells what the bank wants. Things are very different now. The market, we're all working a lot closer together. We understand things better. So composable and collaboration, absolutely fundamental to making this market work. I agree completely.
With that in mind, one of the things that Mambu is cloud native. It couldn't exist not on the cloud, and that obviously allows for scaling up, scaling down, for working remotely. Why do a lot of banks still have their systems locally? Is there? Am I missing something? Why that's still there, or is that just a complete legacy setup? And what is obviously your guys' approach to the cloud?
Yeah, it's historic, right? Things don't change overnight. You see things changing significantly. It's getting a lot more banks and moving more. You certainly see the new banks very rarely going for anything on site, sort of legacy solution. It's sort of the fact that not all cloud platforms or SaaS platforms are created equally. So you sort of get to the point where even some of the cloud solutions are very much the legacy solutions been wrapped in a cloud. So you still get a problem where you don't get the agility, you don't get that cost income ratio aligned to your revenue, and a lot of banks still think the old way. To Jason's point, and this is why the SME market and other markets have been left. Because banks think like banks have always thought. I say I've worked for several large banks, and trying to change the way that a bank thinks, the way a bank operates, giving it the agility to drive to new markets, it's changing. Everything's now data analytical driven. People are seeing the benefit of a SaaS model, continuous release, agility in business. And honestly, I think the biggest thing banks are doing and should be doing, building for an unknown future. Which is where we sort of get the composable piece from as well, which is, hey, you know what you want as a bank today, you know what you're trying to do, but if anybody's telling you in a bank, they know what it's going to look like in 5 or 10 years and can guarantee their market, I think they may be in for a bit of a shock. And I think that's why banks sometimes have that strategy still, where it's a little bit old ways of thinking in the same way they have an old way of doing technology.
So again, I totally agree with Elliot. So at the heart of this, Ali, is culture, change and culture. Now, I could be slightly flippant and say, if I'm head of infrastructure, what possible motivation have I got to start moving away from a server-based approach? Because it kind of makes some of those IT functions obsolete. But where we should be starting the debate is what's the right thing for your customer. Start with a customer-centric approach. Obviously, if you're in big banks, with the greatest respect to them, they're cost-led, and there's quite an insular focus on retaining the equilibrium. There's no real motivation for them to change, which is why we've seen so little change, and the challengers are creating the change. So I think there's a cultural issue. Is there a real appetite for change? Secondly, having no legacy and having no baggage, because clearly some of those systems, and we've seen articles and press where ATM systems go down, and they've had other problems, migration path problems, and goodness knows what else, and the consequential impact for clients, whether it's retail or SME or corporate, has been quite severe. So when we started our journey and we had none of that baggage, we were saying, right, how do we future-proof our platform? Because technology is constantly innovating. There's constantly new apps, new opportunities, and we need a composable architecture. We need something that's sufficiently flexible and adaptable. So as we don't have to keep re-platforming, that isn't efficient. It causes lots of cost and lots of inefficiency. So what we really liked about Mambu was its composable nature, the API nature. So I know Monica talks about it like Lego blocks, that you can actually plug in an API, take out an API. You can think about PSD2, you can think about open banking, you can think about how do you create a platform that's still going to be relevant and valid and cutting edge for the great customer experience in 2, 3, 4, 5 years time, and you'll constantly refresh the architectural components in there. And that's the other reason why software as a service is such a critical, that momentum is unstoppable, because the banks frankly are not the best at managing IT, and therefore get a third party that's the expert and use their expertise to enable you to give a great customer experience, so you can use your expertise, which is dealing with clients and coming up with banking solutions. So I think there's a degree of the tide is coming in and nobody can stop that. But for the bigger banks, the knock-on implication, the consequences of moving their platforms is huge. So it will be slow, it will be incremental. And again, SME is a segment particularly where there's been virtually no innovation, no technology investment. So this is going to be an even slower one. At least you're seeing in retail, because of the critical mass, because of the numbers, you're seeing innovation in the bigger banks. But really nothing of any material, nothing that I can think of, until Starling and Monzo and Tide, the banking license Tide, have come in to start to disrupt business banking accounts. There's been very little innovation on that side. We've seen more on challenger lending, but less on challenger banking.
With that in mind, Lenny, I actually want to talk a little bit about ecosystems, because of course you've got Tide partnering with Iwaka, you've got Starling, which even on kind of the software side partnered with Xero. What's your approach going to be to that kind of ecosystem, i.e., I'm going to lend out, I'm going to partner with, InvoCap or Just Cashflow or whoever to be able to access finance in a very fast way to SMEs. And how does Mambu, because one of the things I love about Mambu, I love your marketplace or ecosystem where you can kind of plug in, a nice little Personetics, we can connect this part here. What's the approach overall to this kind of ecosystem?
I mean, from a Mambu side, it's pretty straightforward. Composable is at the core of everything we do. So, it always used to be a choice between best of breed and best of suite when you were looking at software vendors and how you selected software as a bank. Now it's just best of fit. Okay, and coming back to the building for an unknown future, it's almost like Lego blocks. You take what it looks like as a bank today, and it could be, hey, Jason may want to say, hey, we want to go and launch lending in the UK market, and it could be whatever. And then tomorrow it could be moving into asset management, asset finance. We should allow our customers and our customers' customers to, the same way Jason said, to develop exactly what they need as a business. And we believe in, as long as we pre-validate and have the right connectivity to all of our partners, all of the technology, all of the solutions, it just makes complete perfect sense that we can drive an ecosystem that delivers exactly what people want. It's going to evolve, it'll go on and on and on, and we'll change. There'll be better players in different markets. Over time we can plug people in and out. We just have to be at the core of what is changing from a collaboration and from a driving that innovation and driving new markets. Making sure people like Jason can build a bank that's doing SME financing wherever that may take them. Making sure we can drive any of our customers to deliver whatever it is they need to deliver to give them, their customers, the best customer experience. Honestly, I always find it's really interesting. If you go to api.mambu.com, we have complete open API documentation that anybody can see, where we completely believe in driving through connectivity in the ecosystem. And honestly, anybody who's trying to build something that isn't ecosystem led and isn't open and isn't collaborating, I think they have a short shelf life as we move forward in the industry.
I was just going to add a little bit. Obviously, on the technical side, Ali, you've only got to look at my age. I'm a bit of a Luddite. This is why we have a young 30-year-old Colombian CTO. So I play to my strengths. So I'm not pretending that I'm a great technologist, but what I do know and what I have seen is the power of the Mambu platform, the power of the Mambu process orchestrator, and how we can use that pre-integrated API and how that really can allow us to implement at great speed. Elliot was talking before about agility. With the sprints we do with Mambu, we can make meaningful change and test it in 4-week cycles. This is unprecedented. When I was at Close Brothers, we had an Oracle stack and we used to do the whole regression test and the whole painful process that took forever. Now with the technology that they've put at our disposal, we can do cycles of agile testing and upgrade functionality and work very closely with them really incredibly quickly. Our whole testing regime for our lending platform, we're coming to the end of it now, and end to end we've spent maybe 6 to 8 weeks. It's just incredibly quick how we can go through that functional UAT, all of that testing. So the other thing that I would pay tribute to Mambu is that they are continuing to innovate and they are continuing to make that marketplace relevant and comprehensive. So we're talking to Mambu about some of our future requirements in terms of new product offerings, not at launch, but things like, for example, asset finance or things like invoice finance, which an SME needs. But obviously, as a new entrant, you launch incrementally. But also, we work really closely and collaboratively with Mambu. So I'm really proud of the progress that Monica's made with her colleagues at Mambu on integrating Microsoft Dynamics, the general ledger. So there's a lot of work that we're doing collaboratively, and we see Mambu not just as a vendor, but as a genuine partner that can help us in the longer term service our clients.
And that's absolutely key, Jason. Thank you for saying that, because partnerships is exactly what this market is now. It's not a vendor client relationship. Everything's built on partnerships and driving it, and that's why we believe in the collaboration, the ecosystem, the composable messaging. Now, people sometimes misunderstand the whole SaaS thing. They think it's a code-based deployment mechanism. It's a lot more than that. It's a mindset. It's building the ecosystem. It's the pricing. And as Jason just came to, then I think a very key part that gets missed is the rollout implementation. Corona does not stop us, the lockdown does not stop us from rolling out and working collaboratively. We can still get these things done. A pure SaaS model and a pure collaborative way of working like this means we can all be working from home in different parts of the world. The SaaS model means the software just rolls out. We can implement as teams across industries, across companies. That is a massive change, and this is what people need to wake up to, of why this is such an important shift in the market.
With that, we've got to talk a little bit about Corona and obviously some of the subsequent economic issues. Has this changed your approach to what SMEs need, especially over the last few weeks? Do you think that SMEs themselves have gone, actually, this needs to be my focus on the banking side of things? What's been kind of your take on what's changed for the SME market and what their needs are in the banking space?
Well, the first thing I think that's absolute sharp relief is the criticality of cash flow. So when any business, so a bit like Elliot, I've built various businesses outside of banking as well as inside of banking. So I know the challenges of running those businesses and thinking about meeting your obligations as they fall due, of all the different derivations. So the criticality of cash and monitoring and really being really good system of understanding cash in and cash out and cash flow management, that at a very rudimentary level, that is so important. I think the one thing that I've always felt very, very strongly that one of the things missing one of the greatest things missing in SME is about people and relationships, and building long-term, enduring relationships where you look to add value. But what COVID's brought into sharp context for me is the tech stack is incredibly diverse and functional, and it does allow you to do a lot of things remotely. So, for example, all of my executive committees, all of my subcommittees, I've not missed a single milestone in the last month. I'm actually working longer hours now because I can get my Microsoft Teams and I can connect with whoever I want, whenever I want, and there's no hiding place for anybody, and we're kind of like delivering more, not less. But from a customer perspective, I build a relationship, I build that trust, and sometimes just being able to do a 5-minute video with a client is as good as physically going and doing a handshake. Or it's about keeping front of mind. It's about them knowing that we care, we're interested, we want to support them, and we want to support their business. So one of the key insights for me is technology is going to change the way we do business, because this has been a tipping point for how people work. Do we need to concentrate 50 people in a central London office just because that's the way we've always done it? Well, no, we don't. And how do we drive efficiency and effectiveness both internally and externally with our customers and with our teams in our business? I think it's changed, and it will change. And the smart entrepreneurs have already spotted that. I invest in a business that's London's biggest social housing mortgage provider. And I was speaking to the CEO of that business yesterday, and he was saying, we're going to change our whole property strategy, because a lot of our mortgage interviews we're doing over video now, and clients like it, and we've always thought they had to be herded into a central London location for that experience, and it's just changing. So I think the ramifications of those changes we've barely seen yet, but both at a client level and at a corporate level, we're looking at technology and thinking we're missing opportunities here to properly sweat the capability of the infrastructure. So I think things are going to change a lot.
I think underpin that. I'm sort of sitting here laughing because the efficiency and the working longer hours I certainly see. I actually think it's one of the most amazing things that sort of happened from a experience of working in my career. It's just I'm getting through so much work and getting so much done, and things like this. The world is a much smaller place when you're forced to focus on it. But I see that we're really helping our customers. I can give you one brief example. And this is great about SaaS and how we work. So if we pick up any requirements from our customers at times, we can just work them, turn them around very quickly anyway. That's sort of how we work in the market. But in something like this, we suddenly see there are payment holidays needed, loan calculation, interest rebates, those sort of things. We've had several. What we do, we put together a crack team. As soon as the request comes in, we realize it's going to be across, say it's SME financing, SME banking. This is going to impact these customers. We've had a request from one. Let's reach out to the other 10. Are you seeing this? Okay, we have a crack team. Set up a Slack channel. Drive it through. We can deliver that solution within 2 to 3 days. It's straight out the box. It rolls straight across to them. They don't need to go through an implementation. It just works, and we can then help them satisfy their customers who are in a crisis. The underbanked, the SMEs who are struggling, the people who need access to funds, the cheap people who need to change markets, regulatory changes. We're seeing that around the world. Regulators are saying, give interest rate holidays. We can roll that out in a matter of days, and that really, really changes the game on how we can move agility to do the right thing, not just for us, for our clients, for their clients, but not wanting to sound grandiose, but for humanity and the economy in general.
Well, Elliot, let me just reinforce that, because with our lending platform, literally over the last few days, we've been looking at things like capital holidays, part payments, moratoria, the things that are coming out to see bills, and the things increasingly SMEs are looking to have flexibility because of their impaired cash flows. And the experience with Mambu has been exactly like that. That isn't hyperbole. That's happened in the last few days, that we've looked at some of that capability. And working with Mambu and Encino, that's a fantastically powerful combination. Both sets of teams are incredibly capable. I I look at, I don't need to look too far out in the future. And I look at some of these tier one platforms and I'm thinking, it feels like another Kodak, I'm afraid. It's coming.
Absolutely. Well, the last thing I kind of do want to touch on is in terms of kind of your timeline. What's going to be happening over the next few months with Recognise?
Well, we're at a very advanced stage now where we've had incredibly productive conversations with our two regulators, the PRA and the FCA. I always cross every part of my body when I say this, but we're very hopeful to get our capital guidance letter in the next month or so. So we would expect by the summer to be a fully fledged bank. So we are incredibly close now. And it couldn't come at a better time because so many were the SME clients so poorly served. So as much as I certainly would not wish on the economy, I see the stats about 35% GDP attrition, which is just a number that you can't even contemplate, not even compared to the 30s. It's just totally horrendous. But there are a lot of good businesses out there and a lot of businesses that need support. SMEs are incredibly resilient, they're incredibly passionate, they work incredibly long hours, and often it's a cause as well as a source of building wealth and profitability. And our passion is to support them, and we're very, very close now to get out there and create jobs and support the economy and help to overcome this terrible pandemic. And create wealth for the economy, which is, we're really looking forward to getting out there and supporting SMEs.
Excellent. The other thing that I'm asking, I'll be curious to know what Elliot, your view would be on this. For every bank, you got to have a musician. Obviously, will.i.am with Atom Bank, Klarna has got Snoop Dogg. What's Recognise? What musician do you think would best sum up Recognise?
It's going to be Tina Turner and Simply the Best, of course.
Lovely answer. I think to be honest, I think they're all rock stars. I want to say to Jason and to anybody else out there who's not just in the SME market but also bringing financial inclusion, helping people come out of poverty. It's driving the economy and driving the way that the markets are running. They are all absolute rock stars. They're all just driving something very, very different. And I'll go with the Tina Turner, Simply the Best. And I would say that to every single one of our customers, obviously. But it's hugely important what everybody's doing, because you imagine going through what we're going through now, and as Jason said, as we go through these things in the future, because there probably are many more of these, just with the old monolithic banks with no personal relationships with the SME teams, very, very badly placed to help them in a problem or in a crisis. And the world could look a very different place if these guys, Recognise and the like, were not doing what they're doing. And so, Jason, thank you for doing that. It makes a huge difference to the way that the economy and the world is changing.
And all I would say, Elliot, is thank you to Mambu because and all of the ecosystem that's been built around it, because I think that is going to have a massive impact on not just in the UK, because Mambu is all over the globe, very, very strong in Europe and across the world. So it will help us address some of these imbalances, some of these problems, and ultimately create long-term growth and job security. So, we're so happy to have Mambu as a partner, and we look forward to a very long and hopefully mutually beneficial journey.
Same here.
Yeah, that's good to hear.